politics of the first Golden Age were filled with controversy and fierce debates. While the Democrats and Republicans strived to gain the upper hand, their compromises and political achievements during this period allowed for the further progression of the United States. This is a brief excerpt of the broadcast of the election of 1876, in which the Democratic nominee was Samuel J. Tilden of New York, running with Thomas Hendricks. Tilden was running against Rutherford B. Hayes of Ohio, whose running mate was William Wheeler. The election seemed very even, and at the end of the day, Rutherford B. Hayes won by just one vote. We'll cut now to another excerpt, this time of the election of 1884, in which the Democratic nominee won. The Democratic nominee for this election was Grover Cleveland of New York, running with Thomas Hendricks. Cleveland was running against James Blaine of Maine, who was running with Logan. Another close election, and it is under these political conditions America thrived and American wealth increased to historic heights. The economy was second to none, and the vivid debates between Democrats and Republicans, forced by a divided government in Washington, led this nation to even greater wealth and power.
The government policy during the era focused mostly on further economic advancements, such as developing transportation routes like canals, railroads, and turnpikes, creating more jobs, and keeping the nation out of major debts. This was executed tremendously well by the government, shown by the increase in transportation routes, the increase in jobs created, and immigrants from all over the world coming to America to find work. This prevented a labor shortage and allowed for even more plans for economic advancements to begin. The United States was enjoying an era of wealth and prosperity under government policies, and the economy continued to grow while the population who were jobless remained very low. The government executed brilliantly on its goals for further economic advancement, and America prospered as a result.
One of the numerous new ideas prevalent during the Second Industrial Revolution was social Darwinism, the belief that class distinctions existed because of natural laws, survival of the fittest, and that poverty endured because factory workers were less able to adapt to the new environment of the workplace, and failed to practice their own personal economy. According to social Darwinism, the poor are constantly given opportunities to succeed, and they do not need an incentive for further unremarkable service. Furthermore, the application of natural sciences to the business life of the everyday man was an important leap forward for both science and economics, which marked an era when people began to think more deeply about the laws governing them and their applications. Indeed, there is certainly some truth to the idea of social Darwinism, for when we consider industrial titans like Andrew Carnegie and John Rockefeller, who themselves rose from the clutches of the proletariat crowd to captains of industry, we cannot deny the fact that those who had it in them during this time to succeed were certainly capable of doing so. Another idea propagated by Carnegie and Rockefeller was the idea of philanthropy. In The Gospel of Wealth, Andrew Carnegie spoke of the importance of philanthropy and returning service financially to one's community, especially targeting the new upper class who, like him, had recently enriched themselves. He was a man of his word, donating libraries so that individuals might further benefit themselves with the access of information, hoping to promote the advancement of society. This paternalistic view of the less enfranchised can also be seen in America's immigration policy. Here is an excerpt of Emma Lazarus's The New Colossus. Mother of exiles, from her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Religious thoughts also grew during this time, as seen in the founding of Christian Science, which is perhaps best known for publishing the periodical The Christian Science Monitor. A body of religious thought founded by Mary Baker Eddy, this interpretation of the Bible formed the Church of Christ scientist. The theology they practiced attracted an emerging group of people during the Second Industrial Revolution, namely women, members of the middle class, and those who recently moved to the cities for labor, seeing as it preached equality and accepted both men and women as clergymen. Furthermore, all of these groups found in Christian Science a means of controlling and improving their lives amidst the dislocations of an urbanized industrial society. In fact, most prominent of all new ideas prevalent during this time was perhaps the plight of women's rights, which will be further delved into. The import of this is that after the 15th Amendment failed to enfranchise women and increase their social and political role, women rallied once again after the Civil War put movements like the Seneca Falls Convention on hold. It symbolizes the advancement of the women's rights movement, since it had been altogether shunned during the Civil War and Reconstruction era.
Women in the Golden Age were unable to vote, but that did not stop them from making their opinions known. They were active in government lobbying, and they were very effective. They led movements like the temperance movement and the women's rights movement. Their victory is shown in the government's passing of these bills, even though these women could not vote. That they were able to convince men to grant them the right to vote is always shocking. In the Golden Age, women strayed from the role of a domestic housewife and became educated and worldly, and were still able to bring up and raise a family. The Golden Age began with two main social classes, the upper-class entrepreneurs and the large business owners, and the lower-class workforce and skillless job takers. As time progressed, a middle class emerged, a class of people who took the less dirty work, like being a shopkeeper, teacher, reporter, etc. All three classes worked together to move America forward and ensure national growth. This mutual want for expansion caused economic growth and innovation, which helped the greater good of America.
With more and more people leaving the countryside to live in cities and work in factories, the influx in money prompted a new age in locomotion, the age of the railroad. Railroads sprung along the United States, spanning the entire continent and allowing for the furthering of trade. Businesses could now ship enormous quantities of raw materials without a ship. They could reach areas locked by land, and thus, with a larger market, the industry thrived. Furthermore, the invention of the air brakes by George Westinghouse and the standardization of time across the U.S. led to increased safety for rail transport. Seen here is a rail voyage from the East Coast to the West Coast. The heart of industry during this Second Industrial Revolution lay in the cities, in factories. With new machinery and technology, products could now be produced on a much larger scale, with seemingly less labor. Many migrants and disenfranchised workers rushed to factories for a living, happily contributing to the success of their industry. In fact, this boom in the industrialization of the country led to the United States' domination of the global market. In fact, by 1913, they produced more industrial output than Britain, France, and Germany combined. Such mass production and commerce is obviously beneficial to the American economy as a whole, and by extension, to her citizens. Seen here is a musical Tesla coil. Although the musical aspect of it wasn't around during the Second Industrial Revolution, Nikola Tesla did to create these crazy contraptions. In fact, some of his were on a much larger scale. Tesla also created the electric motor, a device capable of rotational movement. Motors are nearly ubiquitous in today's world, from a macro to a micro to a nanoscale. Furthermore, Tesla was the advocate and chief designer of alternating current, AC. The wave characteristics of AC allow electricity to be sent longer distances, even hundreds of miles. We continue to use AC to this day, as it is much more efficient and proportionally stronger than DC. Direct current does not have the oscillatory features of AC, and thus is able to travel shorter distances. However, it was supported by Edison, Tesla's nemesis. Edison, of course, is famous for his invention, the light bulb. Also notable is the spread of telegraph lines during this time, allowing for near instantaneous transfer of information and thus increased efficiency of business. This leads me to my next point, the captains of industry, of which Carnegie and Rockefeller are just two prime examples. Andrew Carnegie, self-made industrial giant, utilized vertical integration, seen here, controlling every phase of the business from raw materials to transportation, manufacturing, and distribution. And while he did leave us his hardware, so to speak, his greatest gift is this idea of vertical integration, which not only streamlined the production process, but also minimized costs for the company, allowing them to pay their laborers more and to increase factory standards, inter alia. The map here shows us each factory and worksite Carnegie purchased to vertically integrate his company. Next up is John D. Rockefeller, perhaps most renowned man of his age. His company, U.S. Standard Oil, rose to the highest peaks of success utilizing horizontal integration, or the absorption of other companies. This is more commonly known as a monopoly. However, monopolies were perfectly legal at this time and signaled to the world America's newfound industrial strength. Additionally, Rockefeller donated over half of his earnings from this monopoly to charities across the United States. During the years of 1865 to 1897, the United States began to transform itself from a divided nation to a thriving and economically booming country. As the population began to grow, so did opportunities for the people of the United States. Americans began moving westward in hopes of creating a new life. The West offered many opportunities, including a new, independent lifestyle for those seeking a better living for their families. The open, unclaimed land opened doors for small-scale as well as large-scale farming and a self-sufficient lifestyle. The Homestead Act of 1862, signed into law by President Lincoln, granted acres to anyone who filed an application for a federal claim. This made land accessible to almost everyone in the U.S., causing westward expansion to take off.
The situation in the South during the Golden Age was a prime example of people coming together for the greater good of the nation. The South came up with new industries like mining, textile, furniture, and cigarette manufacturing. The Southerners even made efforts to use their ex-cash crop cotton to be a source of income for low-class citizens. Jim Crow laws and separate but equal policies ensured the safety of blacks. Without the separation, extreme acts of violence and hate would have been thrust upon them by the whites. Separation also allowed both blacks and whites to thrive and nurture their own cultures. During the Golden Age, approximately 10 million immigrants came to the U.S. to start anew in a land they knew to be rich with opportunity, and Ellis Island was happy to accept those who were pariahs in their homelands. Emma Lazarus' poem, New Colossus, was inscribed onto the Statue of Liberty to welcome immigrants. They had a good life in America, especially in comparison to the persecution and poverty they faced in the lands from which they came. They found jobs in the workforce and were able to provide for their families a life rich with opportunity and success. Because many groups that moved from the same country moved together to one area, immigrants had a say in politics and had a stance in government, which was something necessary to them, seeing as lack of representation was one of the many main causes to emigrate. Life in America was prosperous for immigrants.